So while people are funneling in, we'll just do like a little brief introduction. My name is Ursula. I am an account executive with Meez, former chef restaurant owner. We also have Sarah, who is our director of customer success and implementation and support and all the fun things, who's
Too
also
many things.
and also a former chef. So basically, and we also have Liz, who is our head of marketing. Hi, Liz. Thank you for putting this together. So first of all, congrats everyone on making it to the finals. We're really stoked to get those samples shipped out to you, have you guys start kind of playing around with the ingredient, but we kind of figured that it might be helpful if you could get a little bit of a leg up by us just kind of like troubleshooting, creating a recipe and costing it with you guys. So that way, if there are any things that are coming up as you guys are doing this yourself, you have a reference, but also hopefully a little better guidance. So we are recording this call. We will send it out to everyone afterwards as well. And of course, like as you guys have questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Sarah's better at answering them, but we're gonna figure it out.
We've also got a community page where, like, if you need some specific topic or whatever, we've got all that detailed out. There's online courses you can take from me, all that stuff. Not that I think we need to do any of that for this contest, but it's there if you want to go deep.
Yeah. So for the sake of just keeping you guys on a quick timeline here, I'm going to go ahead and actually just share screen and get into it. So all of you have already signed up for your accounts, obviously. So let me go ahead and share this. All right. Can everyone see my screen okay? Awesome. All right. So full disclosure, normally when I'm doing these sorts of like demos with people, I will import in a beautiful recipe that I know is going to format great. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually blind import something I've never even touched before into the system so we can really troubleshoot it together. Because let's just be real, that's more likely what's going to happen. So
we're doing it live.
Doing it live. One of my old recipes from my old deli. So when you're creating a new recipe, obviously you are going to title it whatever it may be. And I'm going to go ahead here and you can, of course, put it into a recipe book right away if you want to create one that's called, the contest or what have you. Depends on how much you want to organize on your way here. So I'm going to hit next. So first, you're going to have this buddy pop up. This is what's the bulk add of your ingredient and prep. So you can do both of them in here at the same time. Depending on how you're planning to create your recipe and R&D this, there are a couple options here. If you're really just kind of pulling things out of the air and sort of maybe working off of like a handwritten notebook that you have or anything that's not going to be pulled from text, I can of course type in line by line my ingredients here and then type in my prep as well. However, I also understand that oftentimes we're pulling recipes from existing sources. So for example, my recipe is from my old deli and we're just going to be copying and pasting that in. So you can actually copy and paste in recipes from Word documents, from Excel or sheets like here. If For example, I used to steal recipes from New York Times. I could just copy and paste it from there and put it in. So if you're using an existing recipe and modifying it for this, a great way to do it would just be to copy and paste it in. So just as a heads up, you don't want to do all of your batch sizes. You just want to do one if that's the way you format them, which is the way that I formatted them. And then I'm going to actually just paste the ingredients on one side. And then I can paste the prep on the other. Of course, knowing me, I don't have any prep because again, just being realistic, I never wrote it down. So I can just go here and say, combine everything in a mixer on speed 1 for 15 minutes, allow to rest 3 hours before stretching. So now I'm going to go ahead and just hit add recipe. So here you'll notice my line breaks are captured, and on this side, it actually did reformat my ingredients. So it's going to separate everything out for you. So even if your brain works by writing your ingredient first, it should still capture it in here and flip it into the meez format. A few things just to troubleshoot off the bat. One, if you have a separated out tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon like I like to do, it'll actually separate it into 2. So my recommendation would be to actually convert it to just all tablespoons or all teaspoons beforehand. if you're scaling it, it'll do the separation for you. However, when you're entering the recipe, that might be a nuisance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to increase this to being, I guess I could do 3/4 of a tablespoon. This is what I'm talking about. Sarah, 1 tablespoon, 3 teaspoons.
Oh, it's it's 1 tablespoon plus
3/4 teaspoons. So I'm going to do
right.
3 3/4.
Just take it down, yeah, to teaspoons. Usually when I'm doing this kind of conversion, I would go to the smallest unit just to put that in there. And then you can change it after you've done the conversion.
Yeah, so I have this right here. Also, I like to do a lot of acronyms in my kitchen. Not very useful if you want to have ingredients that are legible to your cooks. So RWV is red wine vinegar. I'm now going to type in red wine vinegar. If it's highlighted in red, it means it is an ingredient that we don't recognize. So you can actually select from a drop down what you're actually looking for, or you have the opportunity to also create a custom ingredient if it's not in there. So now I've turned it into red wine vinegar. So I have everything formatted correctly here, and I have my prep method put in.
You just need to add in 15 each eggs there. Yeah, the eggs.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can, if you do leave that blank, so he's talking about the egg line, you can leave it blank and it will count it as each. If it is blank, it will count it as 1 each. But for recipe legibility, I would totally put each in there.
Yeah, it'll just be blank otherwise. So there's one key feature here that's missing still, and that is the yield. The yield will not populate. You have to put it in yourself. So there's 2 options. One is that I could type in how much this yields. I think it was like a 16 each or something. However, for this specific one, we do have another really cool feature that I particularly love, where it'll actually auto calculate everything for you. So if I toggle this, it'll determine everything combined because it's a dough. So it is just the sum of its parts, and it'll tell me how many total grams that is. If I don't want to work in grams, let's say I want to know how many pounds of dough that is, it'll convert it to pounds for me also. So now I have my total yield with my ingredients and my prep on the side. And then I can already start doing my scaling. So if I'm just doing R&D, I don't want to do 15 pounds of dough. I can underscale it to what I'm actually looking to make. There's no such thing as 1.96 eggs. So then I can also scale it to 2 eggs. It'll tell me my yield, but also update all my math. So I'm not just wasting bad batch on doing bad math. So I have all of those options now in the recipe. Any questions so far about just the beginnings here of creating a recipe, copying and pasting it in, all that good stuff?
Really important to note that if your recipe does not have a yield, it will not pull a cost. So just like, that's often the thing where my recipe doesn't have a cost. I don't understand. It's usually because it's missing a yield.
All right. So I'm going to title this Knish dough because that's actually what it is.
What are you doing?
It auto did it for me. Isn't that cool?
That was beautiful.
So Knish dough, I have that done. Another thing that I think will be specifically useful for the people here, because most likely you're not going to just do a single recipe contribution. That's it. There's like nothing else to it. Usually we all have sub recipes as part of our plated composed dish. So this is now going to become a sub recipe for my full recipe, which is going to be the actual Knish itself. So now what I can do is actually use my existing recipe and nest it into the plated one, the full plated one. So what this calls for now is, let's say, 4 ounces of Knish dough. And then I actually have my fillings in here again. So I have the 9 pounds. Actually, I'll do a 16 times batch of that. So let me go back here. So it's definitely not going to be 4 ounces. It's going to be 15 pounds. 15 pounds. All right. So I have here my ingredients. I do potentially have prep for this one written down. Look at me go.
Good for you.
I did it. Yeah, my bakers hated that I never had anything prepped out. Okay. So again, my lines captured here. And here you'll see I have this happening. A few things to note is, again, I have a highlighted red. That is because it captured the prep action with it. Sarah, what would be your recommendation for this?
Sweet potatoes boiled and mashed. So you could either create a sub recipe, which would include sweet potatoes. And then if you're seeing a lot of yield loss here, but actually I would probably just do a prep action to account for the yield loss. So don't tell anyone I said that on this recording. So sweet potatoes, and then I would add new prep action.
So I'm going to do select sweet potato here. However, yeah, like the sweet potatoes have an action on it. So if I actually click on the ingredient, here's where you have a little ingredient file. For those of you that don't know, we actually have a database of ingredients built out into meez. And what it means is that we did the conversions for you. So you don't have to like weigh a cup of flour to know how much it's going to cost, which is what makes our costing so much easier to do. But we also, for a lot of these, did prep actions like what you see here. So if you peel a sweet potato, we've already accounted for the yield. So your waste is already accounted for, as well as any conversions. So you can also custom create your own prep actions. This is going to be like extra credit if you guys do this for the contest at hand. But if I'm doing mashed and boiled as my prep action, my yield is going to be maybe 70% of the full.
How I feel, yeah.
Full amount. And then I'm able to add that prep action. So now
I feel like they're having like the early day cook do the peeling on that sweet potato, because 75%, like who's getting that? Like,
I know. Well,
Swiss peeler, and let's get that up, okay?
exactly. So now when I go to edit here on my sweet potato, I can see underneath that I actually have mashed and boiled as a prep action. So it accounts for its loss already in my cost. So I have my potato flakes, butter, everything else is accounted for except for it's separated out pimento cheese. So I do not want cheese. I want pimento cheese. Now it's going to pop up everything it thinks that can be close to it through our database of ingredients, but I know that I actually have my own recipe for it. So I can either create a recipe here or just an ingredient. For the sake of our time today, I'll just turn this into an ingredient. So that's how you create a new custom ingredient in meez. I hit done. And you'll note that if you see this little arrow here, we have already nested in the knish dough because that was an existing recipe. So if you just type in an existing recipe you guys have, it's going to populate right there and nest in. Anybody know what is so far wrong with this recipe, what we are still missing?
Your yield.
Yes, exactly. Yield. It will not work unless you put a yield in. So how many does this yield? It was a
72.
It was, yeah.
Boom.
So 72 each. Okay. Now,
so, important to note one thing before we go forward. You can, if you are creating several sub recipes inside of a master recipe, you don't have to start with the subs. You can build the master and then fill in each of the subs. Like it doesn't matter. You can do it either way. So don't feel like you have to build everything sub recipe out and then up.
Like if I wanted to convert this into a recipe, it would then just be an empty file, and then I can just go in and add it.
Click in and add to it. Boom.
Whichever way you want. So I think for right now, that's a good stopping point on the recipe creation. Of course, you have the option to add in photos and videos. I don't have any knish photos on me, but just for the sake of showing you how easy it is, there's a picture of meatballs that I just put in on the side. You can actually take pictures with your phone and up to 2 minutes of video per step and actually import them straight in from your phone. You don't even have to do this from a computer. So that way, if you really want to style this out and have some beautiful shots, you can have a cover photo, step-by-step methods in here. And that way, whoever's
cover photo is required.
Cover photo is required.
Yes.
If you want an extra credit, absolutely put in step-by-step pictures and videos. It is simply as easy as uploading it straight from your phone in here because you can access this on your phone. So as far as the recipe creation, are there any lingering questions about what we just did, basic troubleshooting before we get into costing it next? Cool, we're that thorough. I mean, of course, if you guys have questions as you're doing this, we're going to have this recording and access to be able to ask us those questions as well. So cost is next. So costing the recipe is obviously a part of this requirement. Something that's cool about meez is if you've costed a recipe in one place, it's costed everywhere in all of your recipes for that ingredient. So you'll see that I already actually have a couple costs in here because they were already used in existing recipes. So Yay, we don't have to do the work every single time.
Great price on your sweet potatoes. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously. Thank you. Less than $1 a pound. So pre-COVID world. So it's really easy actually to upload your costs into here just on a manual. For the sake of this contest, I think this is probably the easiest way. There are other ways that we offer, like a bulk import or invoice scanning doesn't make sense for this. So for your purposes, to update the cost of a recipe or ingredient, you're going to go into your cost tab, which is next to the prep method here. You're going to make sure that you are in edit mode, and you're going to go over to this little arrow here. Click that, and you're going to actually just put in your cost. Sarah, do you want to tell me how much we're going to buy potato flakes for, instant potato flakes?
I don't know, $5 for 5 pounds feels
Love
really
it.
good, right?
So you're going to put in your purchase cost and then your purchase unit. You're not going to have to do the quintessential $5 per pound and doing that math per ounce or anything. You're just going to type in what you bought it for and the unit of measure you purchased it in, because we're able to do those conversions and that math for you. So this comes in a 5-pound case. I'm just going to drop down here and see all my different options and select 5-pound case. Now I am going to hit update. And then you will see that it updates my cost for my potato flakes. It cost me $2.25 to put in almost 5 cups of those flakes. Butter is going to be next. Sarah, you want to give me a butter cost?
$4.59 a pound.
Ew.
I know.
I hate it. Yeah, I used to buy mine in the 36-pound cases, and that was not my favorite during COVID, how much that spiked. And then lastly, we're going to do pimento cheese. This is expensive. Let's say that this is purchased in a 1-pound block. It's going to be $9.76. Why not?
Ooh, even the craft version is $14.94 for an 8-ounce jar. Gross. Just saying.
It's maybe mine's cheap. All right. So I have all of my costs now in here. So everything reflects the cost. Great. Love it. When I scroll down, I'm going to now see my total yield, total cost, and my cost per serving. So you'll see here that it did the math of what my yield is versus my cost. So now the most important part, arguably, is coming down to the food cost calculator. Oftentimes, this is where people might get a little tripped up because they do not set their portion size. Sarah, do you want to explain portion size and the U of M of all of this?
Well, essentially, because this recipe is yielding each, portion size is really simple. So because your yield is written in each, your portion size is going to be in each, right? So if you write your recipe as 1 serving, your portion is 1 serving. If you write your recipe as 5 pounds, you need to define what a serving looks like, unless your serving is 5 pounds. So that happens in the U of M equivalency tab. And there's a bridge here. So this is for the entire recipe. If you click edit, right now it's set at the standard conversion, which is essentially if your plate is the same as water, your consistency is the same as water, same density, all of that. If it's not, which it's probably not, you're going to turn that off. And this is where you might say this, the total volume of a serving here is 8 fluid ounces is 1 serving. Or, well, for Knish, I don't know, what, 2 ounces per?
8. Well, no, mine were huge. I'll do 8 ounces, 1 each. They were like
perfect. 8 ounces equals 1 each. So if you were to write this recipe in grams or in weight, in mass, in any way, and you wanted to have the portion size be 1 each, you would need to build this bridge.
So now when I get done, what's cool about this too is that now I can actually convert my each into pounds because it knows how many ounces it is, or into grams because I've defined that. So that way, conversely, if you are creating a recipe that calls, it's like weighted in grams, like it's 4,600 grams, how many loaves of bread does that get me? If you set that unit of measure equivalency, it'll tell you how many loaves that yields. So if you guys always like end up with like a little bit extra or something like that, that'll actually give you that difference right there. So going back into cost.
Also important when you're thinking about just writing recipes in, you know, it's easier to write them in grams for the cook who's weighing them out. But for them to understand how many loaves they're cooking out of all of that, and you're probably not going to assign them a prep item that is make 5,000 grams of dough today. You're going to say, I need loaves, this many loaves. That's where this bridge comes in handy.
Exactly. So now the only thing that I have left to do to determine my percentage is to actually just enter in my sell price. Because I have my portion size defined, the cost already populated because I've costed all my ingredients. The only thing left to do is say I sell these for $6. It'll then populate and show me my food cost and my profit. The other option, of course, is if I want to decide, you know, I need my business plan to all be 18% food cost. It'll tell you what you should sell it for, conversely. So it works either way. So that's the basics of costing. Oftentimes things can kind of like get a little lost here as far as making sure you're defining your portion size, making sure you are costing all of your ingredients. Are there any initial questions? I mean, I know it's different once you're in the app going, but any questions about what we just did, how to make sure that your costs are going to populate for you as you guys start R&Ding these recipes?
No.
Cool. It feels good. Okay.
And maybe show them how to create a public recipe link.
Oh my gosh, here's the best part. All of your recipes can be made public and published to the web. Let me actually share one with you guys. So you can actually go to this share here, and this is normally untoggled. If you go to your share button, you can publish your recipe to the web. And that means that they're going to have a different version of the recipe. Just for funsies, it'd be fun to share it with you guys. So I'll share it with you after this. But when you are sharing a recipe with someone to the public, it's going to look a little different. It's going to look like this. So just to call out a few things here, there's no longer an edit button. And you're actually not going to see a costing tab. You're just going to see the recipe and the prep. So whoever's viewing this will be able to look at those step-by-step pictures and videos that you add in. They're able to do their own scaling, their own converting. If they drop 5 spice mix on the floor, they can scale it to that number. They can do whatever they need. And then when they've refreshed out, it's just going to go back to the original recipe. They are not able to make any changes. Of course, normally it loads. There it is. Any changes. It's back to 8 portions, so they're unable to make any modifications there. Questions on sharing, anything like that? This is also what it would look like if your cooks are viewing a recipe, by the way. You would grant them what's called view access, so they wouldn't be able to look at your numbers or mess up your steps or breathe on it wrong and break your costing like mine used to do. Gives you a lot more flexibility.
So the only, oh, go ahead, Ursula.
Go.
So the only area where I might throw out like a cautionary tale is if you are creating new ingredients, like if you're creating new custom ingredients, like if we went back to the knish and looked at the pimento cheese, there's probably not a U of M that's right behind that, right? Because it's a brand new ingredient and we didn't attach it to anything else. So we may want to, so a neat trick, if you want to click edit on pimento cheese and go over to the U of M equivalency, you can search the meez database for ingredients that are within our database that already have conversions built behind them. So maybe cream cheese for this example might be a great one where you've got to type it exact, which is really obnoxious. You're almost there. You just need an E.
Oh, the whole thing.
The whole thing. Yes, it's obnoxious. So there's cream cheese at the top, or whipped, probably the regular, right?
Yeah.
Slightly heavier. Okay, so now that has proper weight to volume conversion built into it. And if you click done and go back to your recipe, you might see a change in your cost there. But just a call out to, although I don't, it's pretty close. What was it?
Really close because
yeah,
8 before.
8.2, yeah. Right. Who knew that cream cheese was so close to water? It was a bad thing. Anyway, so just in case you run into trouble with brand new ingredients when you're adding things, if you see a little red line or a little red eye anywhere, it's probably because the ingredient hasn't been defined. And what we just did was define that ingredient by adding in a U of M equivalency for the ingredient.
Yeah. So just long story short, for everything we showed you today, If you see a little red eye, that means that something's going on. If you hover over it, it'll tell you what it is. If you don't know what that means, you have a few options. You can, of course, just search for that in the little help support here. You can also join the community, like Sarah mentioned before. But there's a ton of places for those articles, like how to troubleshoot, how to make sure that it's a success. We just want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to really style these out to the best of your ability, really make yourself stand out so that Chess Roll has no choice but to select you as the champion. You know, like add in those photos, add in those step-by-step videos, make sure everything is costed, and also making sure that maybe you have those unit of measures in there, because we'll be looking at all of that. So it'll be really great to see what you guys come up with, and we're really excited.
Imagine having like 27 conversations a day about U of M equivalency. It's just not something I ever expected for my life. And yet here we are.
Yeah. Anyways, I just shared a public recipe with you guys. Those are my black and white cookies from my old bakery. Feel free to never make them, or just look at them, or check out the video I put in that I made for my baker who used to glaze them wrong at 3 a.m. a lot. But you know, it could be also just a sample, like guidance of like how things can get formatted, how to nest sub recipes into each other, scale it, convert it, all that good stuff. And because we're coming up on time here, I mean, unless there's anything else from any of you guys, we're happy to let you get back to your kitchens and start R&D-ing.
You know, living your lives.
Or living your lives. Maybe you go take a break, maybe you're not working.
Go do chef things. We appreciate you. Bye, guys.
All right,
Thank y'all.
thanks, guys.
Thanks.